Open Channel D. Welcome to Cocktails in Waverly's office. I'm Logan.
I'm Catherine.
And I'm Hannah.
And today we will be looking at the Bow Wow affair, which was an interesting time.
So, the Bow Wow affair is actually the first Ilya-centric episode. And Napoleon is in it, but only very briefly. And the parts that he is in, he's just kind of laid up in the office because he, hurt his knee tripping over a cat. I have heard that this was because Robert Vaughn was needed time to work on his thesis, but I'm not 100% certain if that's true.
Yeah, I think it's true because I've heard about it as well.
Okay. So I'll summarize the episode in a second, but let me start with, so this is another episode that deals with the Roma, except that unlike the Terbouf affair, this one does so very badly. So if the Terbouf affair has a surprisingly positive and nuanced portrayal of the Roma people, this one does not, and leans very heavily into spooky mysticism. Basically, they're all Dracula, which is very frustrating, but also there's a lot of, as with the previous episode, there's a lot of use of the G slur. And so again, we will be we'll be basically writing over that with references to Roma instead. But unfortunately, this is not an episode that does a very good job of actually dealing with that particular group of people.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I actually haven't rewatched the stuff because I felt like I remembered this episode very well, but at the same time, I think I blocked out all the stuff you just mentioned.
Yeah, they literally could have had they literally could have had anyone be like the group of people who are the bad guys in this episode, and it would have made just as much sense. So the fact that they specifically chose the Roma is like, oh, come on. But anyway, I digress. So what happens in this episode?
Oh my god, there's even more about that. I'll definitely get into later, but let's have the summary.
Yeah. So in this episode, because Napoleon has tripped over a cat and cannot work, Waverly asks Ilya to look in on his cousin, who has been threatened by a mysterious Dracula-like figure who has been lurking outside of his house and who has stabbed a ceremonial knife through his polka dot pajamas. And he specifically wants Ilya to do this because Ilya is, in fact, supposedly an expert on the Roma. So Ilya goes to check in with Waverly's cousin, who is literally just U.N.C.L.E playing a second character. And
yeah, I just have to say, he gives me Mirror Spock vibes.
Yup.
Anyway,
it's just U.N.C.L.E with a fake mustache. So the cousin is a free spirit who likes to invite fortune tellers over to his house and have these wacky parties, and who Waverly refers to as, he has to do this favor for him because he apparently has some kind of blackmail on him, and it's really all just an excuse to explain why basically there's spooky mystics hanging out at this guy's house. Because what ends up happening is that, despite his assurances that there's no way an assassin could get to him because he has all these security features and also a super loyal guard dog, his dog ends up killing him. And the dog has killed him because the spooky Dracula man outside his house, I don't know, did magic on the dog, and the dog decided it was time to do a murder.
This episode confirms that magic exists in the Man from U.N.C.L.E. universe.
Yep. There is no explanation given for why the Roma are magically able to control animals. And in fact, later in the episode, a vet confirms that is just true.
Yup! And I'm just like, oh my god.
And it's like, they really
It's so
should have...
stereotypical. It's like, it's almost like a parody, but it's not a parody, and that's so scary.
It's not good. It's really not good. They should have just been like, oh yeah, this group of people who are from the, Flingleflorp group, and, made someone up, but instead they decided to pin some weird animal control magic powers on a real life minority group, and that's not good. So anyway, Lester, the cousin, gets killed by his own dog, but they check the dog isn't rabid, it doesn't seem to have anything wrong with it, and so they end up finding out that basically Lester refused to sell stock to the Roma, and therefore they're going to kill him now, or they did kill him so that they could get his stock. Which doesn't make any sense, because, how do you get stock from a dead man? But whatever, anyway. So then Ilya, at that point...
I'm just trying to imagine, someone, actually, stealing a stock. Even though you can't, pick up a stock, but somehow, picking up a stock, and then, a big, a cardboard, a plank of cardboard labeled stock, and then going out of it, I got my stock.
I suppose back in the 60s, you actually would have had a piece of paper confirming it. It wouldn't have just been, digital. So maybe you could get stocks from a dead man?
Yeah,
I don't know.
True.
Well, was it, wouldn't it be, registered to your name or something? Or,
I don't know.
Maybe
I don't know.
I don't know enough about stocks in the 60s to answer that question.
Me neither. I'm not qualified. Let's move on.
I think that the actual obligations are just pieces of paper that you can go and use, I guess, so you don't have your name on the papers.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if it's, bonds, I think, have your name on them, but not stocks. I don't know. So anyway, Waverly says basically at this point that Ilya needs to check in on his niece, who is named Alice, and who is a rather dim young lady. We'll get to Alice. But she is now theoretically the inheritor of these stocks, and so Ilya is supposed to be protecting her, but in the meantime they find out that, there was a spooky fortune teller at Lester's house, and she had said that he was gonna die, and there was a whole weird thing where she pulled out a tiny skull, and, somehow this implicates her in the crime. It doesn't make any sense. And so Ilya does some investigation of tiny skulls, and also he goes to check other random dog attacks recently, and he discovers that all of the random dog attacks that have recently happened have been to people who previously have refused to sell stocks to the Roma. And so anyway, he goes to check in with a vet to see if he can get any information about how this could be being done, and also where two of the dogs that at one point they were being chased by could have come from. And the vet is Guido Panzini, who we'll talk more about. And he, in a very thick and very put on, because he's played by actor Pat Harrington, who's super not Italian, goes through and in this Italian accent explains all these things about the dogs to Ilya and Alice. And, what ends up happening basically is that, Ilya gets both a fox and some serum from this vet, and then they go and they raid the Roma mansion, where this is happening, where the dogs are being trained to do murder, and he lets the fox loose to distract the dogs, and he tries to, arrest and deal with the people who are setting the dogs on people, and then when he himself has a bunch of dogs attacking him, he throws the serum on the lead Roma guy, and the dogs go crazy and attack him, and then Ilya and Alice leave the compound just as Waverly is arriving and is like, haha, I'm here to beat a bunch of people up with my cane. Go take my niece home. And Ilya walks Alice into what appears to be a field. And that's how the episode ends. And if you're thinking to yourself, wow, that made no sense. Yep, that's because this episode doesn't actually make any sense. Now, that's not to say it's not very enjoyable, but it is really dumb.
Yeah.
I just have to say, the way this episode opened, was, not Waverly. Napoleon was, lying down and, was, Sarah. Sarah is just, is she a nurse, or is she just some random girl at
Sarah
Uncle Headquarters?
runs the, radio. She's the radio officer.
That's why I was so confused about that. But yet, Napoleon's just lying down, and, Sarah is, moving his, knee back and forth, and, and Napoleon is just, making all these, grunting noises, and my brain went to a strange place.
Well, you're not the only one, because as this is happening, so the episode opens with Napoleon being physically manipulated by this woman whose job is not to be a nurse, and as this is happening, Waverly comes in and says, "What's this? An episode in masochism, Mr. Solo?" And Napoleon's response is, "No, just indulging Sarah's sadism." But it does not explain.
No, I'm just catering to Sarah's sadism. She thinks it's good for me.
I just don't understand why, clearly he has hurt himself. Why is he not with the uncle doctor and instead being, treated by the radio officer?
Yeah, I guess it's his injury is not that major, but at the same time he can't go and be a field agent, so
he has crutches, and he can't really walk without them, so
guess,
it seems major enough for that.
I guess it's they are implying, as always, that every female, at least in the Uncle Headquarters, is horny for Napoleon.
I mean, yep. But it is definitely still kind of an odd, it's an odd choice. They could have had, the uncle doctor being "Oh, I will help you with your knee, Napoleon," and still have it be weirdly suggestive. But instead they're nope, this lady who runs the computers is gonna do it. So yeah, the episode opens in a super weird way. And then there's a bunch of incredibly cute dialogue between Ilya and Napoleon after Ilya is called in. Napoleon actually is the one who calls, and he asks if Ilya is free over the intercom system, and Ilya's response is, "No man is free that has to work for a living, but I am available."
That's one of Ilya's greatest lines right there.
Definitely. A truly delightful Iliism.
Yeah. So is this an official Uncle mission, or is it just Waverly trying to get Ilya in on this thing that's happening with him? Because it gave me the impression that it wasn't an official Uncle mission.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it just feels like Waverly is just trying to get them in on his own personal familial issues.
I guess this episode feels like it was very rushed in writing, but at the same time, it has the producer's hands all over it, because, we get a lot of character building for Ilya, but at the same time, it seems to be an episode that wasn't planned so well, I guess.
Yeah. And also, like, Napoleon cannot hold a knife safely. Like, he literally just, like, holds the knife up to his lips and kind of licks it a little bit, and I'm just like, that is not safe. You are failing.
Napoleon did not pass his knife safety course at Uncle Survival School.
Nope.
Cadet Solo, get that out of your mouth! What? Yeah, whatever's going on with that.
And then, like, when Ilya grabbed it, he actually, like, when Ilya grabbed it, he actually flipped the dagger down, just, like, as you should. But, like, Napoleon, he just was, like, holding it up, like, towards his head or even on his lips the whole time. And I'm just like, why?
Yup.
Because it's Napoleon. You see, Napoleon is too professional for safety.
I was going to say, so there's a whole situation where when Ilya comes in, he actually asks of Napoleon's injury, so, you know, what is it that happened to you? And he says, was it thrush that finally got you? The mafia? The narcotics mob? And, you know, Napoleon says, well, I tripped over the office cat. And it's such a delightful exchange because Ilya was clearly, like, down the hall, and there's no way he didn't already know this information. Like, Napoleon has crutches, so he clearly didn't just hurt himself. So there's no way that Ilya, who lives in apparently the same building as Napoleon and goes to work with him every day, didn't somehow know he had already injured himself. So he's clearly just causing him to make a fool out of himself in front of Waverly.
Yeah.
Yeah. What if the office cat is Ilya? No.
I've made this joke before, so it's a valid joke. Because in Japan we affectionately call Ilya a cat and Napoleon is a fox, and you will see why in this episode.
Yeah. I never understood the fox thing, and now I've seen this episode, and it all makes sense.
So I guess Uncle is just a big zoo.
Yeah. Waverly's kind of like an owl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's either an owl or a horse. I don't know. Like an old horse who smokes a lot.
So I mentioned that this episode does not do very well with its portrayal of the Roma people, and that everybody's basically just like a spooky fortune teller Dracula. But there's also just like a whole bunch of lines in this episode that are like lol Roma joke that are terrible. But one of them that is actually great because it shows just how I mentioned Alice, the innocent for this week, is kind of dim. So when she and Ilya come in at the beginning of the episode, when Ilya has gone to Lester's house and Lester hasn't been murdered by his dog yet, she gestures to the fortune teller who is in Lester's living room and says something along the lines of, "Do you believe in the Roma?" And Ilya just kind of stares and is like, "No, they're a figment of your imagination." And it's like, it sounds from that line like they're going to kind of like take the piss out of the idea of like the Roma being spooky magical people, but then no, they go full bore on the idea that like, nope, Alice actually was right. They are all Dracula. It's not good.
Yeah, I actually loved that. I loved that exchange. That actually made me laugh.
Yeah. And Ilya's, like, incredible disdain for her in that moment, like, also, you know, it makes sense considering, like, again, like, thinking of the Terbouf affair, like, this is a show that has previously been like, yes, this is an ethnic minority that are regular people. And then Ilya has interacted with them repeatedly, and then in this episode they're like, never mind.
Yeah.
Alice is not my favorite innocent.
I
Not mine either.
I guess I
We
don't.
should mention that this is an Alan Caillou episode, which is
Oh, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Ilya.
Like literally when it got to the credits and I saw it was written by Alan Caillou, I just was like, "Yup, that's of course why Ilya's so straight."
It's so weird because it's like there's no continuity between this episode and the Terbouf affair, even though he wrote them both, like kind of doing work.
Yeah, this feels much more like Gioco Piano in terms of, like, total nonsense plot and, like, just weird random happenstance occurring and, like, a shrill screaming innocent who, like, doesn't know what's going on and just, like, hits on Ilya. Whereas Terbouf Affair is actually a pretty good episode, and it feels like...
Yeah. So, as I said, it feels very rushed in writing because it definitely feels like he had maybe like 2 weeks to write it. I don't know.
Yeah. And maybe he just like didn't even give a crap anymore and just was like, "Oh, here you go. This is what you're gonna get."
Yeah. Wait, do you ever explain the magical dogs? No.
Yeah, so let's talk about the fact that apparently Logan and I are both face blind because I also didn't recognize Waverly's cousin as Leo G. Carroll.
Oh yeah, I actually didn't realize it was like Leo G. Carroll at first. Like I actually was just like, he sounds a lot like Leo G. Carroll. It looks like him too. I wonder if that's like one of his. I wonder if he has like a relative that's an actor too, like maybe like a brother or even a cousin. And like no, it's literally just Leo G. Carroll with the fake mustache.
I guess we could say that it attests to his acting ability because he really did feel like a different character.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's super interesting because Lester actually in the credits, like the opening credits, they give a fake name. Like, it's like Lester is played by, Steve Smith, but like they show a picture and it's clearly Leo G. Carroll. And so the first time I watched this, I was like, does Leo G. Carroll have a twin brother? So I am not face blind, but I'm also very stupid.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, like, he has different mannerisms. He speaks differently. It's like, I guess it's a pretty good job, but at the same time, he literally just put on a fake mustache, and that was it.
Yup. Logan's assessment that this is like Spock level evil twin is spot on. Lester, for the record, is not the evil twin, but he is the freewheeling twin.
He's like a stupid brother.
And when Waverly first... Oops, sorry.
Yeah, I mentioned that when you watched the episode in the 60s on a small TV, it would, like, work, I guess.
Maybe. When Waverly introduces the concept of Lester to Ilya, he talks about how, the Waverly family has always been, prone to free-spiritedness, which is like, really, Waverly? Like, you think you're free-spirited, do you, bud? But he also...
Well, like, it it did make me think about like the one dude from the Mad Tea Party affair.
Oh yeah.
That's not technically Waverly's relative, but like he married into the Waverly family, so there could be some connection.
That's true.
Some shared attributes.
That is very true, actually. You must be this mad to marry into the Waverly family.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like Waverly could be the black sheep of the family.
I don't know about Alexander. He's just so staid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like also, I mean, Waverly is a spy, so it's also a weird career, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing is really, and Logan, your idea that it seems like Ilya is being pulled into a familial dispute rather than something official, I think makes sense too, because Waverly actually says that the reason he's having Ilya check in on Lester is not really because he's worried about him, but because he doesn't want Lester to be able to spread some kind of blackmail about him. He's like, yeah, I owe him because, he knows of this youthful indiscretion I had. And there's no further detail given on this other than, apparently Waverly had a youthful indiscretion and his cousin knows about it.
Yeah, it was obviously Victor Merton.
Yes! I appreciate that idea. And you know what? Based on Lester's behavior, I feel like he would be like, it's fine that you slept with a man, Alex!
So, I mean, Logan hasn't seen the episode yet, but Victor Merton is a thrush official who is played by Vincent Price. And they actually have quite a lot of chemistry with Chicka for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah, there's absolutely no question in my mind that he's his ex.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait.
That's a good episode. I like that one.
Yeah.
But so the two of these standout things about this particular episode, one in a good way, one in a bad way, would be Alice, who I think is really not a particularly well done innocent, and in fact her inclusion in this episode led to quite a lot of fan feedback, we'll call it, that we can talk about. But then on the sort of more positive side, there is this character played by Pat Harrington, Guido Panzini, who in one sense is just a super offensive Italian stereotype, and the whole joke about his character is basically ha ha ha, he's Italian. But on the other hand, he and Ilya have absolutely unbelievable chemistry, and it is just it's so delightful every scene that they're in together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, when Panzini touches Ilya on the shoulder and it gets all close and you're just ah!
Yeah. And also he calls Ilya caro mio, and it means darling.
Yep. So, Panzini is introduced when they're trying to figure out what's going on with the dogs, and there is just absolutely this wonderful scene where Ilya and Alice go to Panzini's veterinary clinic, and there are probably 8 dogs in this scene. And there's sheepdogs wandering around, and Alice is handed a small white dog, and they open a drawer and there's a dog inside the drawer, and there's just dogs everywhere, and no one mentions it.
It's so funny.
Yeah, it's just accepted as a part of life, man.
Who doesn't have a dog in a drawer?
I just exposed myself for being from the West Coast, haven't I?
Does everyone on the West Coast have a dog in a drawer?
No, but we say man and dude a lot.
See, I say that too, but that's because I'm an 80s millennial. So while they're there in the office, Panzini is going through all these records being like, oh yes, this dog is from, some place in Italy, and we know that because its ears have been cropped in this particular way, and it's, again, the whole joke is that he's Italian. And he, shows Ilya all this evidence and so on and so forth. And Alice kind of looks on in, confusion at best. She seems at least to be happy to be handed a small dog. But while this is going on, the whole time, Ilya and Panzini keep being 2 inches apart from each other for no reason. And, just nose to nose the whole time. And then Ilya and Alice leave, and they're attacked by spooky Dracula Roma, and from 12 feet away, Panzini runs down the driveway of his veterinary clinic and comes to Ilya's side and holds his face in his hands, and that's when he calls him Caro Mio, and it's just you've known this man for a grand total of 10 minutes.
It's wonderful.
The thing that is extremely strange about this character, however, is that Guido Panzini was not invented for The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Wait.
So, Guido Panzini was a recurring character that Pat Harrington played on The Late Show.
I didn't know that!
And for some reason, Man from U.N.C.L.E. decided, you know what'll make this episode better? Having someone's gag character from a late-night talk show come and play a vet.
Wow. I didn't know that, and it's hilarious, I guess. Imagine you're watching a straightforward TV show right now, and you see Stefan.
Exactly. It'd be like if you were watching Law and Order and Stefan was a character on it. It's just so weird.
I would watch it. I would definitely watch it, actually.
Sir, can you explain what you saw when you witnessed the murder? This murder had everything. Knives, blood, a screaming victim. That's the equivalent of Pat Harrington being on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. playing Guido Panzini, and it just makes it even weirder that he and Ilya are instantaneously drawn to one another.
It's literally Stefan from the 60s. Oh my god.
Anyway, when I found that out, I was like, that can't be right. And I ended up looking this guy up, and nope, this was his thing, was he played Guido Panzini on... It wasn't called The Late Show at that point. It was before it was called The Late Show, but it's what eventually became The Late Show.
Wow. Yeah. I'm guessing by Logan's reaction that he hasn't watched a lot of Stefan.
No, I don't even know who that is. Yeah, I cannot comment.
I don't know if you would like him because he is pretty stereotypically gay. But
no, I love stereotypical gay stuff. I read The Man from Camp.
Yeah,
of course I do.
So you then you really have to type Stefan in YouTube and watch all of his sketches because he is hilarious.
Yeah, his whole thing is that he reviews various clubs, and his reviews always start with, this club has everything, and then he lists, increasingly insane things that the club has.
Yeah.
But a big part of it is that he's like a recurring gag on specifically the like news portion of SNL, and so he will often end up like cracking up the like straight man in the situation, or, and which is even funnier, he will end up cracking himself up and just like spend like a full minute like hiding his face in his hands trying not to laugh.
Yeah.
It was like one of my favorite sections on SNL for years.
It was amazing, yeah. And
It's
also,
also
like...
It's Bill Hader, so it's really, really great.
He also has a love plot with Seth Meyers.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. I won't spoil it because you have to see it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, Guido Panzini has a secret love plot with Ilya. If this had gone on and he had appeared in other episodes, it totally would have been like, oh yeah, Ilya's boyfriend, the vet.
Actually, Brett Harrington appeared on U.N.C.L.E twice later, but he didn't have a lot of interactions with leadership.
Aww.
So it never continued.
Yeah. I love how this show, The Man from U.N.C.L.E, has like so much like chemistry between Ilya or Napoleon and some random character that only shows some random, like usually like male character that only shows up in one episode that probably is not supposed to be a love interest, but it happens anyways,
Yeah.
and I love it.
There's just a lot of queer energy on this show.
No, my another favorite thing about season 1 is like when you see an actor who had a lot of chemistry with Ilya or Napoleon, you can almost guarantee that they will come back later in the show, but they will play a completely different character, and they will have no chemistry whatsoever the next time. It's kind of weird because
That's really interesting.
It was this way with many female actresses as well, because, like, for example, the girl from the season 6 affair, she appears in season 4, and she is not a romantic interest, so it's interesting. And same with, like, Ricardo Montalban and Pat Harrington and other actors, so... It's like,
that's really interesting because you'd think like, okay, so they rehired this person probably because they did work well with the rest of the cast, but then to put them in a position where like they're not given the opportunity to like express that again is really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like they still play innocent sometimes, and they have like good interaction, but they are not romantic interests anymore. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of an evolution, I would say, kind of. Like, it's one of the things that I think about all the time when I remember about season 4, that it has so many actors who appeared in the show before, but they are like in completely different parts, and it's very interesting to watch. Like, yeah, even the actress who played Clara appears in season 4.
Huh.
And I mean, Hannah, you mentioned it. She was very good in season 4, but she wasn't a romantic interest anymore.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's trend, and I guess I will talk about later when we get to season 4 in like 5 years.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Well, speaking of chemistry with the leads and lack thereof, so Alice, who is really
Alice and
so the whole first half of the episode, Alice just keeps hitting on Elia, and
Yeah.
like says things like, you know, he's trying to stay with Lester so Lester doesn't get murdered, and she basically is like, why don't you come to my room instead? And he's like, I'm good. And she was like, well, if there's anything you want, I'll get it for you. And his response is, I have everything, like, not I have everything I want, but like everything, something along those lines, like everything I want, I have.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he, like, pretty thoroughly shuts her down, and she, again, also makes the, like, do you believe in Roma comment, and Elia's like, oh my god, she's so stupid. And there's a point at which when he comes back after Lester has died, she says to him something like, so are you here to be my bodyguard? Which is to say, to guard my body? And Ilya's like, yup. And, like, he's so clearly not interested in her.
Yeah.
And, like, okay, I have to say that even when Ilya is they supposedly, like, do end up being together somewhat, like, it still does not feel convincing at all.
Yeah.
Like,
no.
Ilya, like, there's this one time where Alice, like, kisses Ilya, and then, like, Ilya just is kind of, like, he just looks so dead afterwards, and then he reaches in to kiss her again, but it more feels like it's out of obligation than him actually, like, being like, yes, let's keep kissing.
This kissing scene was actually very much debated, because even as they were shooting this episode, they shot like two versions of it, because in one version Ilya kissed her, and in another version she kissed him. So basically they couldn't even decide which one to go with, because they were afraid of fan backlash.
Wow.
So basically the fact that she kissed him in the episode, it was because they were afraid that fans would flip out. And basically, it did kind of happen, because they apparently got, like, hate mail for having either been kissed by a girl. And
yeah,
it wasn't, as you might think, by the Slash fans. The letters were written by fangirls who presumably thought that Ilya should be, like, free for them, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was like the thing that, you know, creepy anime fans do now, where they're like, this 15-year-old anime girl can't have a boyfriend because her boyfriend is me.
Yeah.
Or it's like how a lot of, like, K-pop idols aren't allowed to be in relationships because that makes it so they don't seem, like, open for the fangirls. This is the whole idol industry is really messed up, but I'm not going to get into it here.
And that's pretty much what was happening with Ilya, and so I mentioned, you know, they got some, like, less than stellar fan feedback for this episode, and it was because of the fact that Ilya and Alice, it is implied that it vaguely implied that they, like, and I'm putting big air quotes around this, get together at the end of the episode. But the progression of their relationship is such. The first half of the episode, Ilya is like, oh my god, this woman is so stupid. Then Alice is like, I'm going to kiss you. And she does. And then she's like, will you kiss me back? And he very weakly is like, sure, and then does. And then there's no further romantic tension between them, but at the end of the episode, Waverly is like, wink, 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 why don't you take my niece home? Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
No! I know.
And
anyway,
the point is also that he's like,
yeah, and then, like, the episode ends with Ilya and Alice, like, walking into a field together, and Ilya, like, puts his arm over her shoulders, and that's as solid a heterosexual ending Ilya is gonna get in this series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
strongly to me like he, at the midpoint of the episode, realizes that Alice is too stupid to listen to him, and that therefore the only way to get her to go along with his plans is to make her think that he likes her. And then he's like, well, I don't want to lose my job, so I guess if Waverly wants me to take her home, I will.
Oh my god.
Yeah, like
it's so unprofessional.
You can read it as like he just walked her home and left her there.
100%.
Yeah. You know, I like this. It didn't occur to me while watching the episode, but like, you know, Uncle's like Uncle like organization is super unprofessional anyways. But like, still keeping that in mind, like, as this is a big example of that. Like, imagine your boss trying to get you to sleep with his niece.
Yeah.
Like, that's like that would be like such like at my workplace that would be like such a violation of like professionalism.
I don't think my boss knows what sex is.
Maybe that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I should mention that when they walk home together, they also were in a pool not too long ago. So when they're trying to escape the dogs, Ilya jumps into a pool because, you know, as we all know, dogs hate water and can't swim. Right? That's what dogs are?
Yeah, that's totally what
That's dogs,
they
yeah.
Dogs also have vertical pupils, famously.
And and they're obligate carnivores who no, that's cats. I forgot, it's cats. So they jump into the water so the dogs won't get them, which is incredibly stupid and yet works. The dogs stand on the roof and watch them and are like, oh no, we don't want to get wet.
We're not stupid like monkeys.
They're wet when they're walking home, which, like, in this particular instance it's not romantic. Like, it's 100% just like, picture yourself walking through a field in soaked clothes. Like, that's not a romantic situation, and, like, it kind of feels like the reason Ilya is having them walk rather than, like, take up Napoleon's offer to drive is to, like, have it be as uncomfortable and tiring as possible so that when they get back to her place, he can just be like, okay, bye.
And also, it definitely didn't feel romantic at all because it was just a miserable situation, I guess.
This was not like, they show it every year 1,000 times on television when it's Christmas time. And it has Jimmy Stewart in it. And,
it's a Wonderful Life?
Thank you, yes, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
It's
oh my
not
god,
like
I thought you meant like a commercial.
It's not like in A Wonderful Life where, you know, when Jimmy Stewart and Mary walk home, that, you know, they fell in the pool and now it's all cute and romantic that they're wet together. That's not what it's like.
And also, like, Alice is pretty sad, I guess, because the whole situation was traumatic for her.
Yeah.
It's just pure misery.
Yep. Isn't that, oh man, yeah. You know, sometimes, like, the innocents, like, they get all excited and enthralled by the getting into everything, and it's so great, and they remember it for the rest of their lives in a good way. Alice will not remember this for the rest of her life in a good way.
Alice will be like, remember that time that wait, is Lester her uncle or her dad?
I think uncle.
Uncle.
Okay. Remember that time my uncle died, and then I was chased by rabid dogs, and then I had to walk home in my wet dress and heels?
Yeah. Fun time.
I'm trying to Okay, actually, I'm trying to figure it out, like the familial relationships here, because Waverly refers to Alice as his niece, but Lester is his cousin. It's just another like I guess okay, what you call your relative doesn't necessarily correspond to what their actual relationship is, but that just like makes her another cousin.
Yup.
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe she's not even related to Lester, like as a
Uh,
father, or like I don't. Ah.
American system doesn't make a lot of sense to me because like in Russia we call our cousins like uh like twice removed brother, you know,
Oh.
and you
Yeah. I remember learning that.
and you can totally call like their children your nephews and nieces because they're a generation younger than you, but they're not your children. So
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I have a friend who's German, and he talked about his aunt a lot. And then I realized that I was like, what, like, I learned that his aunt actually was not like the sister of one of his parents, and I was like, wait, that's not your aunt. And then he explained the relationship. I'm like, that's your cousin. And I learned that yes, because she's a generation older, she is considered an aunt
yeah,
in German. So
same
I'm just
here.
like, oh.
Same here. I mean, it's super confusing and maybe even dumb calling everyone your cousin. Like, what the fuck, actually?
I feel like, yeah, the way we deal with the layers of relations in American English is very strange because you also end up with weird things like I had a friend who had a niece who was older than her.
Oh yeah. Oh well, I'm in same here because like I have cousins who have children who are the same age as me, basically, and but I still call them my nephews.
Hmm.
Yeah, they are technically my cousins. I mean, if I do it the American way, but like at the moment, I have a nephew who is 3 years old, and he is a son of my cousin. He's not a son of my brother.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like I guess we could view a relationship between Alice and Mr. Waverly this way. Because I'm not sure how they do it in England, but I'm pretty sure that they call people aunts even if they are not their like parents' siblings.
Really? I have never heard of that in England. Maybe that's why my mother always raised my mother, who has a lot of English culture influence, like even though she came here at the age of 5. Like, is that why she raised like one of her friends as my aunt, even though raised me with thinking one of her friends was an aunt? I don't. This is so weird to me. I'm not qualified to answer it at all, so I don't feel like I can get into it very
Yeah.
well because I'm fully American, really.
What I'm thinking about is, I mean, Hannah and I both watched recently a show called Ghosts, and you remember that Alison had a relative who died and left her the house, and
Yeah.
basically they didn't call the relative cousin at all. She was like,
I think they said it was like a great aunt.
yeah, and not even like her great aunt, but also like removed something. I think.
It was like your great aunt, twice removed or something.
Yeah,
I've never
something
been able
like
to
that.
figure out what removed means.
It's like
It depends on it's how many. It's like, oh god, like removed is like I want to think of it as just generations, but I know it's more complicated
no,
than
it's
that,
not
and it's
generations.
annoying.
Removed means she was a cousin of her actual like great grandparents. You know, she was a cousin of her actual great-grandparents. That's what they imply, I think.
Yeah, so like she
Okay.
was someone's cousin but not yours, and like the
Yeah.
level of removal is how many like
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
think it's the way it works in Russia as well. So yeah, but in Russia it's also more confusing because as a child you call everyone your aunt and uncle, even if they're not your relatives.
Mm. That's common in some parts of the United States, but only for like friendly,
Yeah.
adults. So not like you wouldn't call, you know, your teacher or your like a shopkeeper or something like that, but you might call like your mom's lady friend's aunt, and you might call your dad's dude friend's uncle.
Yeah, I mean
It's not common in all of the United States, though.
I think I called like shopkeepers aunts, but not teachers, of course, because
Yeah.
teachers have
I
names. Like, you know.
I was about to say, like, I would be
can't
weirded
wait.
out if a kid called me auntie, but then I thought about the fact that children have, like, called me dad, and I don't bat an eyelash, so... I am a very busty dad.
Goals. I also want to be a dad.
That is not. Being dadly is not gender based. It is a state
Yeah,
of mind.
100%. It's because I wear Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah.
My dadliness comes from the inside, not my body. Anyway, the moral of the story is we
need to go back to
we don't know what's going on with
so far away from the
relatives,
episode.
and I'm going to declare Alice is actually the daughter of Lester's ex-wife from before he got divorced, and he and Waverly both refer to her as their niece, even though technically she's not related to any of them. Period. That's my headcanon.
That's interesting.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, that's a great headcanon.
You know, we're way less weird than being like, yeah, that's my wife's kid, my ex-wife's kid.
She could also be like a daughter of one of their siblings. I mean, either Waverly's.
How many Waverlys are there?
Million.
God, it's so weird that the only one of them neither Napoleon or Ilya gets a really good expansion or explanation of their family, but yet we know all about Waverly's relatives.
Speaking of Ilya's family, in this episode there was a scene in which an old woman in the hospital asked Ilya if he had ever been married. And originally in the screenplay, he was supposed to say that he was.
Oh.
I mean, he had been married, but David McCallum changed it to say, had I but enough time and something. I don't remember the exact quote, but basically...
It's a quote from something. He says... but I had world and time.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it's a quote from. It's some famous piece of classic literature.
So basically, he answered as vaguely as he could, and it was David McCallum's decision.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So that whole scene is also just supremely adorable. So this little old lady, Ilya, is investigating random dog attacks, and as previously mentioned, it turns out they're not random at all. All of the dog attacks are from people's pets who have been coerced to briefly turn evil by Roma magic. And so anyway, let me be very clear, by the magic of Roma stockbrokers. And so anyway, it's dumb, but he goes to see this woman who's in the hospital because her poodle attacked her, and it's like such a supremely sweet scene for Ilya because he's really, really nice to this lady and like doesn't need to be, and Ilya can often be, you know, kind of aloof or icy to particularly people he's like outside his comfort zone with, but he's really very sweet with her. And there's a whole part near the end where he asks if he can like do something for her, like send her flowers, and she kind of jokes, could you send me some whiskey instead or some gin? And his response is, as he's leaving, and I'll make sure to send you those flowers. What goes well with gin? Orchids? It's really cute and a lovely little like character establishing scene for Ilya, that like his aloofness is not, you know, really truly does not come from a place of unkindness.
Yeah.
It does come from a place, I think, of being a legitimate eccentric.
Yeah, I agree. And he also is kinder towards people who don't try to sexually assault him.
Yeah, the older lady, like, gently flirts with him, but it's in a very sort of, like, sweet, non-threatening way, whereas, like, so many of the women who, like, talk to Ilya in the series are just like, hey there, big fella, and he's like, no thank you. And by that I mean, hey there, little fella.
Little fella with the big hands.
Oh my god.
Terrifying.
I mean, arguably we could say that Alice was one of them, because he wasn't too thrilled to talk to her, I guess, but he has to be polite because she was his boss's niece.
Yeah.
And like if we look at the way he interacted with the Italian vet, or even I mean other people, it was fun. Yeah, and we also need to speak about the fact that Ilya is apparently kind of afraid of dogs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Not that he panics when he sees any dog, but like a big angry dogs scare him, and it makes perfect sense, of course. But at the same time, he was afraid of Mr. Baldwin's dog even before it became like
Evil.
magically influenced. Yeah. So I mean, it's a funny thing because like remembering that we take any chance to call Ilya a cat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
it's... Oh, yes.
No, you go.
I was gonna talk about the fact that he brings so, you know, Ilya is kind of afraid of dogs, and he has a whole plan for how to deal with this like evil mansion full of dogs, and his plan involves using a fox as bait. And the reason that we have joked that Napoleon is a fox is that when he lets the fox out of the cage, he says, "Good luck, Napoleon." And then later in the episode, Napoleon actually shows up to the mansion with Waverly to, you know, help sort of finish the arrests. And somehow he's caught the fox that, like, Ilya set free earlier, and it's sitting on his lap in the car, and, like, Napoleon just squeezes it, like, this is my new best friend.
Yeah.
And like I remember when I watched it for the first time, I decided to make a poll on my wiki page, and I asked people, like, would you call a fox that you intend to use for baiting dogs, um, in honor of your best friend? Yeah, and they, like, it's a weird question to ask, I guess.
I think that, like, maybe, like, the idea behind it was that the fox is, like, a substitute for Napoleon, since, like, Napoleon couldn't go out and do the missions himself, but it's weird, too!
It's an argument for saying that maybe he's very dependent on Napoleon.
Yeah!
I mean, they do also call someone who's, you know, like, romantically inclined, like, you fox. So
Yeah.
there's that, too, and the fact that, you know, Napoleon can be a little slippery and sly. I think it makes sense.
And that's why, basically, the fact that Napoleon is a fox is accepted in the fandom. Because it fits.
Also, I have so many questions as to how Napoleon got the fox. So, like, Ilya lets the fox free on the outskirts of the mansion and all the dogs chase it, and there's, like, a bunch of footage of it running back and forth as the dogs are chasing it. And then Napoleon has it on his lap on the way, you know, like, to the end of the episode, and it's like, you're on crutches. How did you catch a fox?
Okay. Maybe a fox ran to him because it felt like
kinship.
Yeah, kinship.
It just leapt in the window of the car onto his lap.
Yeah. Napoleon Fox soulmate AU?
Logan, it's too cursed even for our podcast.
Also, I am extremely jealous of Robert Vaughn. I want to squeeze a fox. Yeah. Why has no one ever let me squeeze a fox?
I got to. I remember somebody made a bunch of gifts from different shows and stuff with Robert Vaughn interacting with other animals. And apparently he has kind of like a way with them because this person was a zoologist, I think, and she said that basically all animals look comfortable with him.
That's so cute! I would be comfortable too.
Yeah, I'm a comfortable animal around Robert Vaughn.
There we go again.
We like to turn from cute to cursed on a drop of a pin here. There are just also a bunch of wonderful Ilya lines in this episode, other than the no man is free that has to work for a living, and the, you know, no, they're a figment of your imagination. So, when he's first starting the investigation, and he's trying to figure out where the weird skull that the fortune teller came from, he says to Alice, like Sherlock Holmes, I like patterns. And this was another, so my husband joined me for this one as well, and he turned and just looked at me because, like, we've talked about the fact that, like, he shares some traits with Ilya by way of sharing some autistic traits. And Ilya's love of patterns there, and his desire to, like, solve the mystery in that way, like Sherlock Holmes, is so, like, wonderfully, like, it's super cute, and definitely reinforces the idea that, like, again, his eccentricity is where his iciness comes from, not, like, being a bad person.
Yeah, definitely.
I absolutely agree.
I didn't think that line like that much, like, so I actually was really liked hearing that, because I didn't get nearly that much out of it. I just was like, oh, like, I see, like, you like Sherlock Holmes, okay.
I wouldn't necessarily have noted it either, except that, you know, my husband just turned and, like, stared at me like, yup.
Like, same. Alright.
My husband, who's like, I like patterns and problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% can relate, because it's when I was 14 and I was reading Sherlock Holmes, I kept saying stuff like that as well. But it was a very long time ago. But it's true, because Ida does have a lot of autistic traits, and it's practically supported by text 100%, I think, because we don't really see him being just like a normie.
Yeah.
As previously stated,
No.
Napoleon is ADHD, and
Yeah.
Ilya Normie A. Oh, that was tough.
I feel like this goes back to what we said last week with what are neurotypical people even like?
Yeah, like, we wouldn't know.
No.
Ain't none of those here. But what was I going to say? But then the other line that I really liked was, so we discover later that Ilya has had Lester's stocks transferred into his name, so now Ilya is the one who owns them, which is why the Roma decide that they need to murder him too. Because again, the best way to get someone's stocks is to make them dead, of course. And so anyway, Waverly informs Ilya that doing this was Napoleon's idea, and Ilya's response to this is, I'll have his teeth for cufflinks.
Oh my god!
A very, very normal thing to say about someone. Ilya, actually a pirate, AU.
Oh, man from U.N.C.L.E. Pirate AU. Oh, I kind of want that now.
Captain Waverly and his his body crew.
Oh, a shark would have to be in
it. Yeah.
Oh, like, imagine Shark is, like, a royal officer. Like, he says on an actual ship that belongs to some official country, like, you know.
I like that, and that, you know, since if we're making U.N.C.L.E. the, like, outlaw agency, it makes sense that, you know, the people who were previously outlaws now have to be, you know, government folk.
So, maybe Slash could be, like, Britain. Completely, like, the opposite. And, basically, the ship that is U.N.C.L.E., they're trying to persuade everybody to become pirates.
Does Waverly have an eye patch in this AU?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
oh yeah,
good.
definitely.
Also, yeah, he also has for hand.
Oh yeah.
And maybe one leg. Just because.
Okay, an eye patch, a hook for a hand, and a wooden leg. That's that's a lot of pirate for one man.
I mean, just one step above Horatio Nelson, you know. Like, Nelson actually had one eye and one arm. And he wasn't a pirate. Yeah, so any other thoughts on the episode? Because I can go into a naval AU.
I feel like I don't know enough about the Navy to help with a naval AU. But
I mean, neither do I. But for some reason, I like so much media that relates to the Navy, so I kind of know a bit of stuff from like shows.
I feel like I'm surprised that Logan has not commented on things about the Navy, considering uniforms, which makes me concerned that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, have you disappeared? No, you're still here. Good.
I'm still here. I really should have commented. I have to say, Navy uniforms are not as much of a thing for me. Like, I'm more of an Army uniform person,
wait.
maybe Air Force.
Wait a second. Have you seen uniforms from the 19th century?
No, those aren't my thing.
Oh, really? Wow. Sorry.
No, I like early to mid 20th century uniforms. Those are like what I'm into.
Bread and butter.
Yeah. I'm the opposite. I prefer historical uniforms because they're so extra.
That's why I hate them. Like, it's too much. No. I don't say I hate them. It's too much. I like the sturdy, like,
they are barely enough. Okay. Barely enough.
Like, cause I actually own a American wool field jacket from 1944, and it is so sexy. I love it.
Yeah. Well, for me, the 18th century is the height of fashion.
I own a Vietnam era, like, army field jacket, because my grandmother owned a laundromat in the 60s and 70s, and a bunch of servicemen apparently dropped their uniforms off for dry cleaning and never came and picked them back up. And then when the laundromat went out of business, somehow all of these jackets ended up in my grandfather's basement. So I have an army jacket with a man's name inside it who I have never met and am not related to.
Wow. It's fascinating.
It's John Nash, which people have laughed at me for because apparently that's the guy from A Beautiful Mind. And I'm like, it's not the guy from A Beautiful Mind. It's some random John Nash. If you're out there, or you're John Nash's son or daughter, and you're hearing this, I have your dad's jacket.
Yeah, if you're one of 20 people who listen to this podcast,
and you happen to be related to John Nash, I will not give it back. You can't have it. It's mine now. Also, yet again, this is why I give off dad energy. Me in a Hawaiian shirt and a Vietnam era army jacket.
Yeah. You know, I absolutely love, like, military aesthetics, even though war in the military is actually terrible. Like, literally, like, just, oh yeah, those army jackets are so good! I love them!
Yeah, I guess I'm more of a lesbian, maybe, but, like, I can appreciate women wearing, like, Hawaiian shorts and, military jackets, but not men so much.
I completely agree with you.
Because men often look like so baggy in these things. Like, yeah.
No, I completely and totally agree with you. Like, I don't understand like uniform fetishes with dudes, but I totally get it with ladies. And
I'm so sorry.
but similarly, like, I've never understood the like women who are like really into men in suits. And but women in suits? Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. No, I like suits on men, but on women it's even better.
See, for me, like the best look for a dude is jeans.
I disagree with that so much. I'm all about those uniforms.
We keep forgetting that Hannah was actually born in what, like 1955.
Oh, 100%. I am every man to me that is attractive has a little bit of a like 1970s, like I'm gonna wear bell-bottom jeans and like a slightly fitted 3/4 length sleeve t-shirt.
I'm more.
Are we even gonna go back to the episode
we're
anymore?
Just gonna talk about our.
Okay, we should probably get off. We should probably stop then and continue it afterwards.
No, I want to say that I'm more of a person who was born in like 1945. So Hannah is a bit younger than me.
I do actually have. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, that's why I like the 60s, because it's close to my aesthetics, I would say.
That makes sense. I do have one other thing, actually, or two other things with this episode. One, there's the whole sequence with the skull. So there's this weird foray into complete nonsense where the fortune teller who's at Lester's house is like, I have pulled the card for death, and then she pulls a skull out of a fishbowl and is like, ah ha 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 ha, but it's a teeny tiny skull, and it's like clearly like a marmoset skull, like it's a small monkey skull. And everyone at the table is like, oh my god, where did you get a tiny human skull? And it's like, it's a monkey skull.
Like, it's not even... Like, it's not even, like, it's not like the proportions of, like, a baby skull or anything, so, like...
It's so obviously, like, a small monkey skull, and everyone is like, oh my god, a miniature human skull, you're a wizard! And then Ilya is like, well, I did some research, and it's actually a type of tropical bird, and he, like, has this piece of bone that he sticks to the little skull and is like, look, see, it's basically a toucan, but it's like a toucan with a human jaw. It's terrifying. So anyway, the whole thing with the skull has literally nothing to do with the rest of the plot, and they never explain how it's supposed to really relate to the rest of the plot. It's just like, yes, it's spooky, moving on. And then I did not notice this, but my husband noticed this. When Ilya is writing a note down part of the way through the episode, he pulls a notebook out of his pocket, and it is Uncle branded.
Yeah,
wow.
And my husband just muttered, they really are the world's worst spies, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. And, like, I guess since, like, Thrush likes putting their brand on everything, I guess Uncle has to as well.
But can you imagine, like, being, like, a secret MI6 or, CIA operative, and, like, you're supposed to be keeping yourself secret, and the enemy captures you and goes through your belongings and finds a bunch of stuff that just says, like, I'm an MI6 agent on it.
It actually reminds me of something that came out a bit later. Like, you remember the 60s Batman?
Yes.
And the fact that they had, like, writings everywhere. Like, bad ladder, bad shark repellent.
This is the uncle phone. This is the uncle mobile.
Yeah.
This is the uncle fire
Yeah.
pole. Yeah. But anyway, I appreciated that, we have further proof that when they say that Ilya and Napoleon are the best spies in the, New York branch, it's like, well, bar is very low.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta be just happy that they didn't have to change their names to something related to relatives, like everybody in Thrush
Has to be birds.
Yeah.
Wait, is that actually a thing about with Thrush?
Not officially, but like half of Thrush characters are called Partridge, Egret.
Oh my god, I never noticed that! You're so right!
Which means that either they only hire people with bird names, or that, like, people join Thrush and then they're like, oh man, oh no, it would be so cool.
Yeah.
What... I'm trying to think of, like, a really, like, uncool bird that you could choose that would just be really lame.
Blue-footed
like,
booby!
Imagine being, like... Yeah. Like, Mr. Toucan!
No,
Mr. Toucan and his partner, Mr. Booby.
Yeah.
And this is our friend, Mr. Dodo!
Yeah, so basically, imagine, like, if Uncle had the same practice. Napoleon's son.
I feel like you'd have a lot of priests. This is Father Solo. This is Brother Kuryakin.
No, he would be called Napoleon's son.
Yeah, that makes sense. Instead of, changing your title, changing your actual name.
Yeah. Who did it be then? Either cousin. It's boring.
Yeah, Ilya cousin. Alice also makes that mistake at one point in this episode. She's like, "You're the man from Cousin, right?" I was like, "Oh, Alice, do you really not know what the name of your uncle's agency is?"
Yeah, but what if she calls him cousin? That's why she was looking like she knows that it's the organization of her uncle that's called Uncle, but she calls him cousin, so it's gonna be called cousin.
Poor Alice. Yeah. She's really not. Yeah, I mean, Alan Caillou does not write great. It's really interesting because Alan Caillou does not write great women, despite the fact that he's the one who's always like, Ilya is actually super into girls.
Yeah, he is really, really into those women.
Oh, by the way, I remembered one more potential Thrush agent, Marion Raven. Remember her?
Oh yeah, she's another bird.
Yeah, but she wasn't a Thrush agent. She was like the opposite. But she
Maybe
was also
Thrush
from
really wanted to hire her.
Yeah, she was from the episode written by Alan Caillou, and she was Ilya's first love interest. So, but they never kissed, so it wasn't real.
Yeah, that's how fanfiction works.
It's interesting because I feel like most of the women that Caillou writes are very much of the, like, women. We just don't know how they work. They have capricious desires that make no sense because they're women variety. Like, none of them have, like, consistent internal motivation, and it's very frustrating. Yeah. And I feel like I would be much less bothered by Ilya kissing a girl if it was someone who was not Alice.
Oh my god. Do you remember the episode from season 2? It was called The Birds and the Bees Affair?
Yes.
It also had like Ilya have a romantic interest, and she was also awful.
Ilya is apparently only into real dumb girls.
Yeah, and like in season 3, he had a kiss with Nancy Sinatra, who also played like a pretty dim lady. Maybe it's a friend. I don't know.
Maybe he feels like, well, he literally drags Alice by the arm for most of this episode. Like,
Yeah.
there's a scene where he's like, I will throw this pepper in a dog's face, and you should run when I do that. And he throws the pepper in the dog's face, and Alice literally just stands there and stares and watches the whole scene and does not run and does not make any move to escape until Ilya has had the dog follow him up the stairs, jumped down the stairs, grabbed her by the arm, and dragged her out of the house. And the entire episode, like, anytime he needs to get her to go anywhere, he just needs to take her by the arm and drag her. And it's like,
Yeah.
again, that's part of what leads me to feel like his whole, I'm gonna kiss you now, is like, maybe I can convince her to go along with me if she thinks I love her? Which is to say, maybe Ilya is only interested in dumb girls, because that's how he can manipulate them, which is...
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate thing to believe about that character.
I mean, actually, Ilya often has pretty misogynistic stuff to say, I guess.
Yeah.
But it also makes it easier to read him as gay. The fact that he doesn't really connect with women.
Yeah,
Like,
I would agree with that.
Even Napoleon's affairs are often more based in reality, I would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
and I mean, it was a stereotype at the time period that, like, gay men were misogynistic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it actually still carried on even into, like, even in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I have been really into the Reanimator movies lately, and the first Reanimator movie, the character of Herbert West, who is heavily gay-coded, is also heavily misogynistic. So, yeah, it definitely was a thing for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yep. But, it is also interesting when otherwise heroic characters do have actually legitimate character flaws and not just like, his flaw is that he's too nice.
Yeah. Oh, he's kind of clumsy.
Yeah.
It's like, Ilya does kind of suck at women.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't make him a bad person, because he wouldn't actually harm women, like, he just doesn't really like being around all the time.
Yeah.
And as we saw with, like, the older lady, he's actually fine with women who are not romantically interested in him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's still bad, but, like, it's not catastrophic.
Yeah, I would say it makes sense. I don't mean that it's good, but that, like, considering, like, if, like, Ilya is gay coded, the idea of, like, women that are not romantic interests, like, not seeming like threatening is like understandable, even if it is playing into that gay coded, like, that gay stereotype.
Yeah, there was also this thing, like, in some episodes they mention Ilya's mother or Ilya's grandmother. So basically, you get this impression that he had a lot of women around when he was growing up. So basically, maybe it's easier for him to relate to older women. Like, Ilya's character makes a lot of sense, surprisingly, throughout the whole show, because there are not many things about him that are inconsistent, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, because basically everything that's established pretty early on stays there more or less, except for maybe the fact that they stop mentioning that he's Russian.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that they can't decide exactly where in the Soviet Union he's from.
I think Kiev is is a pretty good like bet because it came up twice, so it's more than anything else, I'd say.
Also, that actually feels like a very sort of, it's not really Ilya's issue, it's his co-workers' issue kind of thing, because, like, Americans in the 1960s totally would be like, he's from somewhere in the Soviet Union, I guess. He's Russian, right?
Yeah.
The same way that people call, worse people English, you know?
Yeah, yep. But yeah, I like this episode. It's not a good episode.
but it's a good episode if you are really interested in Ilya and, like, knowing more about him.
Yes, yeah, it's a great character building episode. It's a terrible plot episode.
Yeah. And he has a lot of great quips too. That's really fun to watch.
It's also great to see that he can carry an episode on his own because I guess at the time it wasn't a given because he only recently became a constant in the show, I guess, and they put their trust in him. So basically, after this episode, he became a real co-lead, I would say, because before that he was more of a sidekick, and after this episode, he became the second main character.
Yeah. Which is why, you know, a show called The Man Singular from U.N.C.L.E. is really about two people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it should be. I don't know. And that's one of the things that bothers me about the reboot movie, because like they didn't change the name and it makes no sense. Like we talked about it right now. Like, who is the man from U.N.C.L.E? Is it Alexander Waverly?
Yes.
Waverly is the man from
Yeah.
U.N.C.L.E, yep.
Because, especially, like, in the movie, he comes up with the code name U.N.C.L.E, and it's only revealed in the last minute of the movie. I'm like, what is even happening?
The answer is, it's Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant is the man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah. But who is U.N.C.L.E? Yeah, anyway, I will stop hating the movie because I can go on, you know? Okay. So, the man from U.N.C.L.E, when we talk about the show, could be about both of them, but at the same time, it's supposed to be about the them. But as the show progresses, it becomes more equal, I guess. So, yeah. Anything else to say about the episode?
I can't think of anything.
I love when I go to the vet and the vet confirms that magic exists.
Yeah.
I mean, he would believe this, right? He has dogs appearing in his drawers.
Maybe the real answer is that dogs are magic.
Oh, yep, that's it.
That's why they can't go in the water, because they're witches!
Oh my god.
Alright, case closed, everybody. Dogs are witches. We can go home now.
I mean, I have a dog now, and I can attest to the fact that she's a witch. You know?
Yeah, she totally is.
She's magic.
I bet she feels like magic when you pet her. She probably is really soft.
Yeah.
She looks soft.
Yeah. So basically, it was a very animal-themed episode, and that's why it's called Bow Wow Warfare, right?
Yeah.
Not because of the fact that Ilya got kissed by a girl.
Wow, Chicka, wow, wow. I'm so sorry. I'm not even saying it with a. It's not It's not bow chicka wow wow, because that's not how Elia was feeling. It's bow chicka wow wow.
Well, there we have it, folks.
On that note,
pet your dogs, remember that they're witches, and think in the back of your head, bow chicka wow wow.
Bow chicka wow wow. Oh no, I said it. So, I guess in the next episode we will be talking about the first steps affair. And it will be an interesting one because it makes so little sense.
Looking forward to trying and failing to recap that one.
Yay! As always. Well.
Alright,
goodbye,
everybody.
Then.
Signing off.
Thank you, everyone. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.